I have 5 brothers, one of whom has been to 5 funerals, one of whom has been to none. In the words of Kevin Von Ehrlich, I used to have 5 brothers, but now they're not even brothers. The crew of the doomed Space Shuttle Challenger didn't die instantly, but they were probably alive and aware of everything until the crew capsule crashed into the ocean surface at 207 miles per hour. That's pretty frightening. If I remember correctly, at least one person had their ventilator activated and a switch was thrown that could not be moved by human power. According to the FBI, there are between 30 and 50 active serial killers in the United States. From time to time we hear stories of them going missing and never being found. Some serial killers are so skilled at what they do that they are never found or caught. The first firefighter killed in the 9/11 attacks died when a body fell on him in his yard. 2 people were killed at the same time, one when entering a building and one when leaving. One of the saddest things I've read about is that, according to Iowa aid groups, there are 100,000 people missing in the U.S. at any given time. Some have never been found and others have changed their identities and live among us hoping they will never be found. There are approximately 20 to 30 million slaves in the world today. Only 7% of resuscitators work in hospitals. But in Hollywood, there is a 100% chance that you could be bleeding internally right now and not feel it until it's too late. For me, that was the scariest thing. Now I'm experiencing the terror. If you are within a certain distance of a nuclear blast, you don't die instantly, you get third-degree burns all over your body. It kills the nerves so quickly that there is no pain left at all. John Hershey told us in Hiroshima that when he tried to put people on boats, the skin on their arms and hands would slide off like a glove. When my parents were born, there were only about 2.5 billion people on the planet. Not a generation later, there are now 7.6 billion of us. My parents had too much sex. There are a myriad of diseases that can be cured or are treatable. We have this notion that we go to the doctor to find out what is wrong with us and the doctor treats it. There are many diseases that many doctors dismiss because they don't know what causes them, and people can be sick for years. Microplastics in water is the #1 cause, washing polyester, acrylic and other fibers. Every time they are washed, large amounts of tiny fibers get into the water. The lint catcher in your dryer acts in a similar way. While natural fibers break down harmlessly, plastic fibers enter the ecosystem, become fish and shellfish, drinking water, and then back into our hands. The side effects of this are just beginning to be realized, but they will be quite dire. I was giving a presentation on this topic and realized that research in this area started about 20 years ago, back in the 80s when SFA had to bring in a professor from Berkeley to explain environmentalism to Congress. Every picture you pose in could be your obituary. Either someone will find your corpse, someone will watch you die, or your corpse will never be found. If you are an astronaut and are on the ISS when an apocalyptic asteroid crashes, you may be one of the last survivors, but with limited oxygen, no food and no outside help, you will have to go home or survive. War of the Worlds Z has a chapter on zombies, but it's not about asteroids, it's about apocalyptic zombies. You might be attending your best friend's funeral, or he might be attending yours, or they both died around the same time, or they were separated in Egypt, or they killed or slept with their spouses and can't afford it because they're in jail. Ricky U. Brittany, the young man in Tower 2 during 9/11. There was a company employee there. He took the elevator to the lobby, but security convinced him to go back to his office, where a second plane hit him and he was trapped in his office, nowhere to run. A recording of his phone conversation with his father has been preserved, in which he laments that he should have left faster and not listened to the guards. He died. At the time of 9/11, I was working in Lower Manhattan. Now many office workers go down the stairs at the time of the alarm, no matter what the security guard says. I am one of them. There are still about 200 bodies on Everest, but retrieving them requires a lot of effort and risk. Some of them serve as progress markers for other climbers. It's like a table of human points. Breathing resets that clock. Retreat. Your eyelashes are full of microscopic, 8-legged eyelash mites. They live, lay eggs and multiply in your eyelashes. Eventually, they may be your friends. When 7,500 Americans remain missing from the Korean War, blue whales become big enough to swim through. There's nothing like swimming through a meat tunnel. Every one of us has swum through at least one tunnel, but we don't need a whale to swim through it. Since 2012, the U.S. military has lost more soldiers to suicide than to combat or accidents. There are 1 million times more ants than people. In the state of Wyoming, cattle outnumber people 5 to 1. If they start a revolution, it's game over. There will come a point in the not-too-distant future when someone will remember you for the last time. Everything you think you have accomplished in your life will be lost to time forever. That's why we have statues. According to current cosmological models, the universe is 70% dark energy, 25% dark matter, and only 5% baryonic matter. We don't even know what dark matter and dark energy are, so we are more or less impure, almost non-existent. And these are the elder gods. We are just a debt flowing through us. Sometimes the hardest part is not what you want. It is very important to love a person. Even if you don't make mistakes, you can still lose. It's not weakness, it's life. A brain aneurysm can happen to a living, healthy person at any moment. It can cause instant death, and there are few warning signs to detect it. So at any point in your life, you can take your last breath and nothing will warn you about it. This is my third fear. Statistically, about 10 people who leave comments here will not live to see Christmas. This comment is the only one that scared me. If Wonder Years were filmed today, it would cover the years 1997 to 2002. If a 70-year-old show were filmed today, it would be called a 90-year-old show. If there was a catastrophe and civilization was effectively rebooted, much of its knowledge would be lost or not recovered for future archaeologists. In 1958, a nuclear bomb was accidentally dropped over South Carolina. If it had exploded, it would have looked like a firecracker, similar to the thick firecracker dropped on Nagasaki, and would have completely changed American history. Later in 1961, nuclear bombs were again dropped over North Carolina. One of the North Carolina bombs deployed a parachute and activated the launch mechanism. Only one low-voltage trigger prevented the bomb from exploding when it landed in Japan. Most cell phone cameras have a mixed shutter sound, even in silent mode, to prevent unauthorized skirt-flipping photography. The fact that this has become such a serious problem that such measures were required is just crazy. In Japan, most cameras make a shutter sound even in silent mode to prevent unauthorized skirt-rendering photos. As I recall, the same was true in South Korea, where I lived a few years ago. When I asked my friends to mute the shutter, they were shocked that such an option existed in other countries. One time we were childhood friends and we had to play one last time and no one noticed. For some reason that was the saddest thing. I almost cried. In 1933, a doctor named Carl Tanzler robbed the grave of a patient he was obsessed with and stole her body. He lived with the corpse for 7 years until it was dismembered. He fastened the corpse's bones together with wire hangers and glued glass eyes on its face. He was caught when someone saw him dancing with the corpse. It's worth noting that if the window had been open, he would have been waiting for her at her grave years after her death. Perhaps it was the rod that scared him off, but it's quartz. If he'd contracted rabies 6 years ago, he wouldn't have found out until December 2018, and by then it would have been too late. Mad cow disease, caused by eating contaminated meat, doesn't show symptoms for decades. I am a US citizen who cannot donate blood because I lived in the UK in the 1980s. There is no test to see if you are infected. I think one day I'm going to start slowly losing my mind. And there's nothing anyone can do about it. I sincerely hope you enjoy this video as much as I do. If you bookmark the channel, you can subscribe. Until then, I'll be uploading a new video every day. Check out another video if you like it.